Who'd win in a wrestling match, Lemmy or God?
Lemmy. God.
Wrong, dickhead. Trick question. Lemmy is God.
Hello and welcome to Caged In Presents Coppola Connections, brought to you by the Breadcrumbs Collective and hosted by me, Petros Patsilivus. The film for this week's episode is Airheads, released in 1994, and it's a whole lot of fun. And my guest is the fantastic Molly McGuiness. Before we get into this one though, if you've never listened to the podcast before, what we do here is we watch every single film in the collective Coppola filmography to determine, are they the greatest film family of all time? This episode had some little issues, so it got uploaded late. You might not know that if you listen to this at a later date, but it got uploaded later than I usually do. There were some clips and they all got messed up and stuff like that, so I've had to edit the episode down, but it's still a fantastic conversation. Molly was an amazing guest, and so amazing that she may be coming back for a future episode, so keep an eye out for that if and when that happens. Obviously, all the regular spoiler warnings do apply for this nearly 30-year-old film. We talk about it in all its gory detail, so please do check out the show notes to find a handy document that will show you if and where this film is streaming. So I guess all that's left to do is to grab your demo cassette, fill your water pistols full of hot sauce, and head to your local radio station to hold it hostage as we make some Coppola connections. On this episode, we're taking over the airways with rock. Airheads is a comedy hostage film that was released in 1994, directed by Michael Lerman, written by Mike Wilkes, starring Brendan Fraser, Steve Buscemi, Adam Sandler, and a whole host of other great comedy talent. The cinematographer for this film is this week's Coppola connection, Jonathan Schwartzman, my partner in crime this week, helping me take this film hostage and see if it meets our demands for what a comedy should be, is writer, comedian, and podcaster Molly McGuiness. Molly, are you Team Van Halen or Team Roth?
I'm Team Roth.
Oh, you're like a man in a nice spandex then.
Oh yeah, way more rock and roll.
How are you, Molly? Are you doing well?
I'm good. I'm really good. I'm very excited about this because my little Moshe heart just loves talking about any kind of like rock and roll film.
Perfect. I'm excited to talk to you as well, because like this for me feels like, with obviously like your recent like BBC like new comedy awards success, right? We can call it that, right? There, getting to the finals.
Why not?
I feel like one of those like several bands who saw the Sex Pistols at the Manchester Civic Hall, where it's like, is it going to be one of those things where it's like when Molly McGuinness's name is in lights, I can go, I spoke to her on my podcast back then. Am I going to be like, I'm going to be real cool. I'm going to be one of those people who knew about the Strokes before the second album or something.
That is very flattering. But if that was the case, it would be funny that it would be Airheads.
Amazing. Well, before we get into talking about Airheads, I always like to ask my guests about how they became aware of the Coppola family, whether it was like through a specific person, like what was your entry point, and then when did you realize that there was this tendril like family that kind of spreads out throughout Hollywood?
Well, I'd probably say, so I did I did film studies in college where like everyone just like watches. You try and watch like 100 greatest films at that time, and you think that you just kind of like a proper film bro after 6 months. So like I think that's probably around 16 I found out about like the Coppolas and stuff. And I think I didn't realize like the weirdness or like how many were in the family until I was like in my Nick Cage era, obviously. That's kind of like this like it's just such a strange connection. That then I kind of like read up on it and then like realized like, oh yeah, like Sophia Coppola and you know, there's just so many people involved. But I think Nicolas Cage definitely made me like take interest in the fact that this family like basically rule Hollywood.
What a weird connection to that family as well, because he kind of seems almost like the antithesis of what Francis Ford Coppola is about. Like he's recently kind of said like superhero movies are dumb, and then you've got like Nick Cage who's been in like what like nearly 5 now, whether you count like the animated films. You know what I mean? He's done 2 Ghost Rider films that kick ass, and like Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and like yeah, he's just like in super. So like I always feel like he's probably like excommunicado at Christmas, or he's got to sit on like a different table to everyone else. So it's like, come on, Nick, you
He's
joke.
he's defo the black sheep of the family, which I love. Like I think he's just doing whatever he can to piss them off.
That is definitely like something that's always found fascinating about Nick Cage as an actor is like he obviously changed his name to Cage from Coppola, but at the same time was very happy to kind of take the family handouts early on in his career, because he's in like Rumblefish and Peggy Sue Got Married, so he was very much like, Uncle Francis, have you got a little job for me? And then would kind of like at the same time he's like, but I'm Nick Cage, I'm not a Coppola. And it's like, yeah, very much are.
He's like the moody like goth
Yeah.
kid, isn't he?
Like, is there any like real surprises? Because obviously, like you've gone for Jonathan Schwartzman, who is, I've again, it's quite fascinating because he kind of like ticks off a whole weird stream of films that like are just kind of a lot of mainstream stuff, whether it's like Pearl Harbor and Armageddon. He's like the cinematographer on, and like like in the early 90s doing like these comedies and stuff like that. Is there any ones that I don't know? When you saw the list, you're like, oh, how are they connected to the family?
Yeah, because to be honest, because I didn't really know much about John Schwartzman. I didn't really pay attention to him being the cinematographer. So look, I heard the name, but I didn't know what his involved, what films he'd actually done. I didn't really take it in. So it definitely kind of like, like Airheads, for example, being in this, I did not expect to be on this like connection. So that was exciting. I think if anything, I thought it might be like go through like, because Patricia Arquette being married to Nicolas Cage and then David Arquette could also go that way. I mean, it never ends, does it? You can go anyway.
David Arquette. I'm just smiling right now thinking of David Arquette in this film and can't wait to really dive into what the fuck he is doing. I love all of it, but it's also full of questions. So you go.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I feel like it's not surprising to me anymore necessarily, but I suppose it's more like people that aren't necessarily actors and directors. Like everyone's kind of got the feet in there some way.
Yes. Because
Jason Schwartzman's felt quite random the connection seemed quite strange at first, but
because the like connection even to the Coppola is quite a tenuous one, because he's like Jason Schwartzman's half brother from like his dad's first marriage. But I was like, I read an article where Nicolas Cage said my cousin Jonathan Schwartzman was the DOP on The Rock, and I was like, he's got to go on the list. If Nick's calling him family, he's a part of the family to me.
Exactly.
Amazing. So again, this is
Can
probably
you imagine Christmas with them?
m- mental.
Dinner.
Apparently, during lockdown, Francis Ford Coppola just invited like everyone. Like, I'm not sure if it's just the immediate family, but like Sophia's family, Roman's family, they all just stayed at the Napa Valley like mansion that he owns, which I just imagine would have been fucking class. Do you know what I mean? Like drinking wine, eating pasta. I know this sounds like I'm being very stereotypical Italian, but I think that is what they do. Like that is very much what they do. So hopefully I don't offend any Italian listeners.
That
Yeah,
is exactly how I imagine it. Really good pasta.
yeah, like a sauce that's been cooking for like 3 days. Do you know what I mean? Like
The smell. Ooh.
cutting garlic with razor blades, proper Goodfellas style. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, this is going to be like a hot, like I guess a hard question, but like, what would have been the first Jonathan Schwartzman film you would have seen? Obviously, it's not something many people look out for. Is the DOP of or like a cinematographer?
I don't know.
Yeah,
No, I don't actually know because I was thinking about the first like Coppola film that I've seen,
yeah.
and
Let's
I
go
thought
with that.
it was probably Jack. It's got
Oh,
to be Jack, hasn't it?
yeah.
It's got to be. But John Schwartzman, I don't know. You might have to give me some shouts, and I might be able to work it out. What was he the DOP on old 90s films?
So The Rock, Armageddon, Pearl Harbor. He did a lot of work with Michael Bay, Ed TV, if you remember that film.
That's
Uh,
Matthew McConaughey one, isn't it?
yeah. It's like the kind of I remember it's one of those weird things where it came out around the similar time as like the Truman Show. You know, like you always get those two films, whether it's Deep Impact and Armageddon, where it's like it's quite similar premises. It's a guy who's being filmed constantly. Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah. It's yeah, but like Jack as a first Coppola entry to arguably what many people call like the greatest one of the greatest directors of all time is a weird entry point. That's a weird, bizarre film, Molly.
It really is, but I'm going to be controversial. Might be my favorite one. Like it's the one you can go to the most. Robin Williams is brilliant. It's perfect. My favorite Coppola film.
Amazing. I love that Francis Ford Coppola's reasoning for doing it as well is obviously like done all these serious films and like The Godfather, men sitting in smoky rooms talking, and his reason for doing Jack was it's quite heartbreaking because he had polio as a kid and was like, uh, I really connected with the character of Jack because he's a kid who has a condition that nobody else understands around him. And now like I know that like the film is almost heartbreaking that is his like his reason for doing it. I can just picture a small Francis Ford Coppola bedridden from polio. Like yeah, it's heartbreaking stuff.
That seems so much like I feel like you could have done a film about that.
Exactly.
Instead of just being a big kid, like
Yeah. One of my like memories that seared into my brain of Jack, I haven't watched it in so many years, is just the farting in a tin and like passing it around the circle and then one of the kids has to smell it. That's Jack, right?
I think so. Yeah, I do remember that.
Yeah, I've either got it confused. I remember, yeah, a tree house. It's either that or like something
Yeah,
like the Sandlot kids or something. They
not
fart.
big. I think it was. 'Cause I always got Big and Jack mixed up as well,
Yeah.
which is like I feel like people are always one or the other.
Mm.
What would you say you are?
Well, I just think because like time hasn't been great on Big now, has it? Obviously, it's kind of like like people have revisited that film and gone, oh, it's like there's a big paedophile story in it. Do you know what I mean? This woman basically fancies a kid, like even though like despite him being in and it's kind of I guess it's you could probably speak more to this than me. It's probably a lot of like women in like the 21st century dealing with men anyway, even though they are like in the body of a mid-20s Tom Hanks, they are still 13-year-old boys who just want to play with, I don't know, trampolines and pinball machines and stuff like that. So Yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna have to say Jack. I've done a fucking podcast on Francis Ford Coppola, so I've got to say Jack, right?
Yeah, good choice. Yeah, I like that. Maybe all men have a child Tom Hanks inside them.
Oh.
That
that could have been phrased better, but I totally understand what you mean.
Oh, here we go.
This is what when you do hit the big time. This is where they'll be coming back to find you and cancel you, Molly.
That is how I get cancelled. Yeah. I wouldn't have it any other way.
Perfect. So, yeah, what is your relationship with Airheads, and when did you first see it?
So I never seen this as like a kid or anything. It was 94. I don't remember this being very like being advertised as a young. I don't think I do know that it bombed at the box office and stuff. So I don't really remember it as like at the time, but I did watch it when I was about 19 or 20. So I used to work in CEX.
Amazing.
Yeah, of course I did. Like, and it was great though because you got like so many DVDs like when they came out, and they'd come in and you could just like first dibs on them. And I remember Airheads coming in, and it was like 50p, and I was like, "What is this?" Like, never heard of it. Just the cover, Brendan Fraser, Steve Buscemi, Adam Sandler, dressed as like 80s like hair metal band. I was like, this is my dream film, just from looking at the cover, and I bought it immediately. And turns out it wasn't my dream film. Like, I feel like I did see. I do really like this film. I'm already dissing it, but I think to me, like, I love the characters. I want to see them in something, but not a heist.
Yes, yeah, I totally know what you mean.
Like, I think that was one of the things that, like, there's lots of things that I do really like about it, but I think, yeah, when I'd seen the cover, I was like, this is the film I've been waiting for.
Yeah.
And then,
well, it kind of looks like, if you watch the trailer, it looks like it's kind of going to be somewhat like Wayne's World and like Bill and Ted, with a bit more like grit to it, because obviously like is swearing, like they're a bit more like, I don't know, like you see like obviously like a lot of SNL alum in there, whether it's Adam Sandler or Chris Farley and stuff like that, and you've got like Michael McKean, because I remember seeing like trailers for this on VHSs in the 90s, because I'm like the youngest of three, so like there's a lot of like kind of early 90s VHSs kicking about when I was growing up. I remember being like taken aback by it, that of all the people, it was Joe Montana, like the radio DJ, because I loved Baby's Day Out when I was a kid, and he plays like one of the villains in that, and I don't know why. I was like, it's got the guy from Baby's Day Out, and I remember seeing the trailer and being like, I gotta watch this film, and then like Sandler, really into Sandler, massively into like George of the Jungle. So like it felt like when I first saw,
perfect.
Yeah, it felt like purposely built for me.
It is probably the best casting ever.
Yeah,
like, it's just so good. Like, you've got Chris Farley, you got guy who does the voice Fat Tony, Michael McKean, like, amazing. You got Kramer in there.
Yeah.
It's David Arquette. It's brilliant. It's so good. The casting, and like the one thing I think because when I was like I rewatched it not long ago, and like Michael McKean is obviously brilliant because you've got like Spinal Tap and everything, but for some reason there's so many films that he's in where he just kind of plays these kind of really boring characters. Like, he doesn't really bring that much to, like, he's not that entertaining in the film, but he's like such a funny guy. And there's like a few films that I see, I feel like they waste him. They put him in like, they give him rubbish roles sometimes. And I'm just like,
Well,
so there's a lot of things like that, I think, where you're like, oh my God, and then you're like, oh.
Well, like what you get there from like Michael McKean is you kind of like get the impression like he just plays the company stooge, right? He's just like really like, well, the radio's gonna get changed into like he's the one doing the dirty dealings, whether it's with like Kramer. He's like Kramer's getting fucked basically. I'm not quite sure what Michael Richards' character really is, apart from like again, like a kind of the he like when he came on screen, I was like, this feels like Kramer. Like I know, and obviously like, but it genuinely felt like when Kramer like becomes um like Art Vandelay or something like that, when he kind of becomes like one of these alter egos to get Jerry or George out of some mishap and like going in
Always
somewhere.
Always crawling about.
Yeah.
Like you must have terrible knees. Like no, his character was like he's just like fumbling about the whole thing, and it's kind of entertaining, like going back to it. Where does it go?
Yeah.
It doesn't go anywhere. He just isn't in the film anymore. It's honestly like they just forgot to film his last like arc of the plot. Because like the whole thing is like he's like, ooh, in the vents, like trying to do something. What is it? I don't know. He doesn't come back, and there's no mention of him. Because it gets to like near the end, and I'm like, Kramer's gonna come back, so he's gonna do something, something's gonna happen, and then it goes to like the future, and they're in prison, and it's like, oh, we just forgot. We did.
Well, that like with like the Michael Richards thing, it kind of feels like his whole thing is like a riff on Die Hard, right? Like him just like crawling about the vents, and there's like this is a big question for me. There is a moment in the film, and I don't know how vents work, but I don't think they work like this. There is a point where the vent has a clear top, like a glass top, and he is behind the sofa where Adam Sandler and like the girl Susie from the rate like Nina Shmizenko, are like getting it on, and there's like a glass top to the vent, and he's kind of like getting again. It's just all like pratfalls because like he's just getting like rattled about in there, just like really slamming against the sides. It's like just crawl on, just crawl. Like I don't know. I mean, his whole sole purpose for the film is to basically bring in the actual gun like to the party because he tries to like take over the situation. It's like drop out of the vent for one. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, don't just like dangle your hand down like a lunatic, just like pointing an Uzi at people or whatever. But
It's so loud and clumsy. Like he's not being discreet. Like you don't need to be in there.
Yeah.
And it stresses me out. Like
So before we go any further, Molly, I'd like to always like to ask my guests to tell us what this film is about. Would you mind giving us a little plot synopsis of this film?
Okay, I'll try. Right, so you've got Chaz, Pip, and Rex. They're in a band, like a rock, like hair metal type band, like Love, Motorhead, and based in LA, and the kind of like losers, and they want to get a record deal or get heard in the radio. So they decide to basically sneak into a radio station and get their tape played, their demo played. And they go in with toy guns, just in case, that are filled with hot sauce. Just in case they get in trouble, And they get in, and the DJ kind of like takes the mick out of them. They end up just suddenly getting the guns out, taking them hostage. It's all live on air.
Mm-hmm.
SWAT team comes. It's a mess. They end up going to the police and being like, they break the demo tape.
Yeah.
And so they need another one. So they like persuade the police, Chris Farley, who's my favorite in it, by the way, just fumbling around. they persuade Chris Farley to like go and find the one other demo tape that there is that the girlfriend's got. So he like ends up going to like Whiskey A Go Go or something with all like the metalheads and like mosh pitting everywhere and finds the girl. That tape's broken. They end up more hostage stuff happens. They end up getting a deal with someone, and they have to play live, but they've got lip sync. And Brendan Fraser's like, we can't do that. And also, while this is, I'm all over the place. Sorry about this.
Perfect. This is perfect.
Also, while this is happening, it's all live on air. So like all the like metalheads are like, oh my god, we love them, and go and watch them do this show. They won't sing, they won't lip sync, so they just like smash up guitars because they're so badass. And then they end up in prison, but only for 3 months.
Yeah.
And they play live in prison like a Johnny Cash thing.
So I guess I wanted to, it's good to have a female perspective on this, like, because Brendan Fraser's character, he's like, you get from that, he's quite a problematic guy. And I guess like, I'm not sure if you've encountered guys like this who are kind of like, promise you the world, do you know what I mean? And are happy to like, just bum, like, I'm gonna bum about chasing my dreams, babe. Like you bring in the bacon, and like whilst I kind of do what I've got to do, and then you can reap the rewards. Because that's basically what ends up saying to her, right? It's like, once I'm living the dream, you can come along for the ride. Like,
yeah, yeah. I mean, Brendan Fraser's pretty much a loser in it.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very hot in this film, though. Most beautiful. So you know,
he's very. He's very set. He's like, I say this as a straight man, like Brendan Fraser just oozes sex. And I love, he's got like a big reveal in the third act, is that he used to be like a nerd in school, but
like this is like a big part of the plot where it's like, oh no, I can't believe he was a nerd.
we get that amazing like Lemmy cameo where he's like,
yeah,
he like reveals something about himself, like, I used to run the school paper, and it's like, I'm pretty sure most like emos or like moshers that I know in school were pretty dweeby. Like, no, if I was kind of on the periphery of that, and I wasn't a cool guy. And it's like that thing of like, is it a big surprise that like a lot of these people were nerdy?
Oh yeah, 100%. Although I do think that Lemmy was cool.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah. Lemmy's all, I think Lemmy came out the womb smoking a cig and like had a dealer bring in some speed round for him before he was free. Yeah, he was a cool, yeah.
But the thing with that scene as well is like Lemmy's like a big part of like these posters of him, and there's like the Lemmy's God thing, and then Lemmy just appears and no one reacts. Is he a different character? He must be someone else, or do they just not care? Like, because to me, this is another annoying thing about the film, because it's so good in some ways, and then there's other ways where I'm like, huh? Like they got Lemmy in that film. There's so much they could have done with him. That's just not acknowledge him there. Like, why was that the decision? But anyway,
or for some like the payoff of this film could have been that like Lemmy happened to be in LA, like came down for it, saw them, and like he's like, I love what you're doing, lads. I'm gonna take you on tour. And that's like the kind of like what we get at the end is like they served their time in prison. Then they're supporting Motorhead on tour. That would have been like a real like fist pump. Like, come on.
That would have been so good. There's so many things like that. But with the relationship, yeah, it's toxic because Brendan Fraser is definitely a loser, which I think is. I remember watching that documentary, like the metal years. I can't remember what it's called, and it was like all about.
Is it the like death of Western civilization, or like the I've seen clips of that, and those guys are fucking great.
They are, but it's great. They're great because they kind of like they all look the part, but they're all they all talk about how they hit on girls, like, you know, pull these girls so they can have a place to sleep at night, and like they'll cook them food, which I think is so funny. Like, so they're basically like they're getting using these women just so they have like they have nothing, like they're just massive like losers and like slobs or whatever. So I do feel like Brendan Fraser kind of portrayed that kind of role quite nice because he's still very sweet. He's not like he's very likable. He's just kind of like he is like an airhead, I suppose. But the girlfriend was like actually like assaulting him, like
yeah.
constantly. Like I felt bad for him.
Yeah.
So it was just all around just a big mess. Like so when they were like getting back together, I was like, I don't know. I think it would be better if they didn't.
What I think works really well with this film, especially at the beginning, is it's got such like it tells the story or like introduces you to everyone with such like brevity. Like you kind of know, like when you get like Brendan Fraser sneaking into the record studio and stuff like that, or like the recording companies like offices and stuff, and then that exchange between him and Kayla, it's like I've got who they are, and then you get this moment when you get introduced to is it Rex and Pip, and it's kind of you see why Chaz is the leader of the pack. This feels like a perfect time to talk about Steve Buscemi. What do you think of Steve Buscemi in this film?
What I think that I really like Steve Buscemi first. I mean, I like everyone in this film anyway. He's just a bit of a psychopath in it, really. If I had to describe him, I think he's definitely kind of the least lovable. I don't really understand his like intentions a lot of the time in the film. I don't quite. I feel like it's probably the least. Like it's not as strong of a character as the other two. I do think he's cool though. I think he's like definitely like the most like rock and roll there out of the three of them. He's definitely the most like he's not a poser, is a even though he works in a toy shop. But
he very much feels like one of those like I think every kind of group, especially when you like get into rock and stuff like that, there's like that guy you'll meet down the pub who is definitely like 20 years older than you.
yeah,
And he's like hanging around with like 18-year-olds and like kind of telling you stories. And like he looks considerably older than Adam Sandler and Brendan Fraser. Like I think it's just the curse of Steve Buscemi. He's kind of looked like a 40-year-old man, like ever since he like kind of started off his career.
if they did an Airheads too, which would be amazing. Imagine that. Imagine if you brought those three back. Steve would look exactly the same.
Yeah. That is something I thought about, because obviously we're living in the age of like these legacy sequels and stuff like that, and like whether it's like Halloween or Scream and stuff like that, and like horror, or even like Dumb and Dumber 2 or whatever, like you get it in comedies. To see, like, I would be there, like, for Airheads 2. I know nobody's calling for it like they were for Bill and Ted, but like I'd love to see these three back in action.
I would love it, and especially like with the return of Brendan Fraser. Anyway, like what a great role to come back. And like I said, like I think I do think I would love to see these characters and the world of it in another premise. Rather than just a heist, because I think I would really like to just know like the rise and fall of the kind of like band and everything. I would find that more interesting. So I feel like there's just so much you could do for the sequel that could potentially do way better than the first one.
Yeah. Well,
Brendan Fraser's definitely not as hunky as he used to be, though. But you know, maybe that will work.
Yeah, I don't think that matters. I think the thing that like Brendan Fraser's got about him, and he does it really well in this, is he's really sexy in it, but he's just really sweet, and like you get that impression of him as a person as well. There's that amazing clip, I think, like we like I shared it to you at one point, and but you'd already seen it, of Brendan Fraser playing his Nintendo Switch when he's doing like Zoom interviews, and it's just like, I'm so glad you're back.
I know, I love that. Oh, I love it. Also, that like weirdly connects to the film because do you know the receptionist? She's like playing her Game Boy or whatever.
I think it's
and
yeah.
sneak in. because she's so invested in a game, but I feel like it's like a little cute mirroring of Brendan Fraser, just like
that is
on his a little bit.
Yeah, that is true. I think it's like a Sega Game Gear as well, which is like,
Yeah.
I love it because I had one way too late. I think I had one in like the late 90s when people had PlayStations. My parents were like, "Oh, your uncle found this in the loft. Do you want this?" It's like, it's a color screen and I can play Sonic. Yes, please. But yeah, so like the takeover itself, I think like. Well, yeah, I think this shows what a madman fucking Steve Buscemi is in this film as well.
Defo, yeah, he's definitely the psycho and like the anti-hero of the three of them. Because yeah, Brendan Fraser is really sweet. And Adam Sandler's the dope, really, isn't he? Like the
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting film because it's before Adam Sandler is Adam Sandler, right? Before it is a film to Adam Sandler, and it's quite rare that.
I think he just done like SNL stuff at this point. Maybe there was the odd film, but he wasn't who he is now.
And I love we get moments of him, like those things that people love about him. There's this great moment when him and Steve Buscemi are he's teaching him how to become like a madman hostage taker, basically. Yeah, you get Adam Sandler's doing a voice in this film. What do you make of Adam Sandler's voices he does in movies in general, and what do you make of the one in this one, Molly?
In general,
Well,
God, I don't know.
You know, like,
he's like idiot voice.
Yeah, because there's either movies where he's like just he's angry man a lot of the time, which we kind of get a bit of both. We get that in this, and we also get him doing, "Oh, I'm Adam Sandler. I'm gonna talk a bit like this."
Which, you know what, I used to think like Adam Sandler can't do that voice anymore in 2021. Hoobie Halloween, he did that voice. What? What was going on? He's still doing it, and everyone's just like, all right with it. Like, okay. He's not as bad in this one. I think sometimes it was kind of hard to tell what they were going for in here because he's not amplifying it as much, but he's definitely still like a bit like, yeah, a little bit like the dopey kind of one. But then was also kind of like a bit of the heartthrob one with the other girl. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say like it's his funniest role or anything. Like, it's definitely a tamed down Adam Sandler role. It was really just it was quite likable rather than like hilarious, really, weren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think,
but I loved his look. I loved the crop tops and
I got a lot of time for cropped. I recently watched Rocky 3 again, and that is a film that is like, I think at one point there's a cropped vest, and I was like, "Poor, that's a look that's got to come back." I'm already thinking maybe if I shed a few pounds, that's gonna be the summer 2022 vibe. Try and get that going.
Oh yeah, I'm all aboard that. Tops of boys, 100%. He was like looking back as well. Adam Sandler's character was weirdly racist sometimes. Like which you were a bit like, can't say that anymore. When you watching it back recently. So there's definitely like flaws in this film. But
like not to like defend it. I think like that kind of it all comes down to ignorance, right, with his character, because he is just it does it well in portraying that he is like just this kind of real simpleton who doesn't quite understand social cues and stuff like that, and like, yeah, I guess he's made a career of
Hot tub or whatever it sounds like.
Yeah. Or starts talking. I think he talks to Yvonne, the receptionist, at one point about like, when you're in a store and they assume you're stealing, and she's like, that's never happened to me. And like, I think the fact that like that is her reaction makes that funnier in the fact
Yeah,
of like
that's true.
you've made a racist like stereotypical remark, and she's gone, no, that doesn't happen to me. That is your prejudice, like projected
Yeah,
on me.
it's kind of like the Always Sunny thing where like they can be terrible people because
Mhm.
that they're being terrible people rather than them kind of being like this is acceptable. Um,
That,
so yeah, definitely. Um, but
that,
it's one of those things, when you re-watch like 90s
oh
comedies
yeah,
now, and you're just kind of like, oh, like
yeah,
it was definitely like one of those, I think, at parts, but
yeah. It's not as bad as some. Like it's not like I don't know. Like you look
not
back on,
bad as well. There's some horrendous ones.
yeah, you look back on like the American Pie films, and it's kind of like your eyes widen, being like, really, this is the final act. Like this is like some kind of like he's basically trying to dupe a girl into some kind of hidden camera like porn situation. Okay, like this is where this is leading up to. Great. But it's great that you mentioned It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, because like obviously that is a show that is predicated on arseholes being arseholes. And what this film does really well is get you on side like really quickly with people who really like you shouldn't be on side with, because like even though they are dopes and just they have their dreams of becoming a band, they are still taking people hostage, whether it's like water pistols with hot pepper sauce in it. It's like it still doesn't negate the crime that they're committing, right?
Yeah, and to me, it's like, what what's the point? Because like you're gonna play your song and then you're gonna go to prison. Like it was always known that that would happen,
Yeah.
and that is what happens. But this kind of like they're not kind of like, oh, what if, or what
Mm.
about the consequences, or even kind of worried. They're not worried about the consequences whatsoever. Like it's kind of hard to like understand their why they think this is a good idea. But I suppose that is why it's called Airheads.
Yeah, I'd be interested to know how this played with like the kind of the community, or like yeah, like the hair metal scene, like whether they were
Mm.
like this is just poking fun at us. Do you know what I mean? Because the film like manages to get in like loads of cool references to it, and very much feels like it is a part of that scene. But at the same time, the whole the whole idea of it is they're fucking idiots. Like they like, and it's like saying, like you said about that documentary, like these guys are fucking clueless to the real world, and that all they care about is becoming rock stars. And I guess like I don't know, yeah, it's an interesting thing to think about, because it's got that weird dichotomy in it.
I suppose as well though, because it's 94, and I think that it's definitely kind of,
Tail
playing
end.
taking the mick out of
Hmm.
like the 80s,
Yeah.
that it's probably like one of those things now where it's kind of, well, at the time it'd become like it had eaten itself, that hair metal scene, and it was gone, and grunge was coming in.
Hmm.
And like I suppose like they've got like, like Motorhead was still cool, like,
Hmm.
and there's still music that is still cool, but I suppose it's definitely like a parody of like the 80s, like, like when that whole time. So it was like it kind of probably worked then. And then you've got like Beavis and Butthead are in it, which is
Yeah.
like so, and I think that does make, like that would have been like huge at the time.
Hmm.
So it's kind of like all in that same world of kind of the goofy rock and roll
I love the
thing.
fact that even Beavis and Butthead like look down on them when they're like
Yeah.
kind of like we saw you the other week and we thought you stank and stuff like that. It's like
Yeah.
I like I'd totally forgotten about that kind of like cameo, and I'm a I, I'm a massive like Beavis and Butthead fan. Like like Beavis and Butthead Do America is an absolute gem. Like
Yeah, they're really
it's
no, that was really cool. I love Beavis and Butthead. So look, I don't know if you see it,
amazing.
but I love them. And I did think that was a very. Because I think this film, like, it has a good soundtrack. It has it gets humor really well, like that dopey kind of that Beavis and Butthead like Mike Judge type thing really does that so well, and like aesthetically it looks nice. So yeah, and the parody of like that kind of 80s era, I think it just does really well with like really great actors. So that's definitely like the thing that I love about it.
Well, yeah, we've talked about like some of the great actors in this and like some of the cameos. So obviously, like O'Malley, the cop in charge, is Ernie Hudson from the Ghostbusters, which is crazy.
Yeah.
But then this film's not got one but two Ghostbusters in it, because we get Harold Ramis for this absolutely barnstorming scene that I guess has gone down kind of like is when people talk about this film, they talk about this exact moment.
Who are you? Chris Moore, Capitol Records, A&R. Come on, let me in.
I told you, man, things are going our way.
Take a few steps back from the door.
Toss me some ID.
Hey.
All right, man, so how'd you find us?
The cops told me you guys are looking for a record contract. There's something going on here we got to take immediate advantage of, guys.
Yeah,
Come on,
what?
let's talk, huh?
Yeah, what's that?
What's that? Will you look? This is hot. You guys are the hottest thing since Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch.
Marky Mark, man, that guy sucks.
Okay, forget Marky Mark. There's magic out here, guys. Let's talk contracts. I promise you, someday we're going to be backstage at the Forum laughing about this.
All right, let me ask you a question. What side you taking the big David Lee Roth Van Halen split?
What do you mean?
What kind of question is that? What side did you take, Halen or Roth?
Van Halen.
He's a cop.
Oh, come
Later,
on,
taken.
Oink, oink.
Strictly a judgment call. They sold a lot of records after Dave left the group. Come on, one more question. Hey, come on, cheers, one more.
And then we get the amazing who would win in a wrestling match, Lemmy or God? And trick question, Lemmy is God, which like if there's like an enduring line to be taken from this film, it's that, right? It's kind of
Oh yeah, that's the best line.
it's this film's parting message, if anything. It's kind of, you can tune out after that and be like, yeah, I think Lemmy is God.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I guess we've got to talk about David Arquette, because what the fuck is he doing in this film, Molly? Can you explain it to me? I don't know what he's doing.
I don't know, like he's so annoying in this film. like you know, like we were saying before about kind of Adam Sandler kind of amping up these kind of like idiot characters, and he didn't really do it as much. It was a little bit more subtle in this, slightly, you know, but David Arquette, what? Like he was just a buffoon. Like he didn't need to be there as well. It was just...
It's not like, one of the things, it's not even established what he does at the radio station. He's kind of like found in a cupboard and he's like, "Whoa, what's going on, man?" Like he's kind of like plays an even more dumber version of them. And there's this scene that like is seared into my, because it's just weird. There's like a montage going on and it keeps cutting back to David Arquette playing the Game Gear, but he's like gurning and there's like a magnifying glass on his face.
He's like shaking.
Yeah. Like if it had a sound, it would be that. Like it's just like, and it's like, what the fuck is he doing?
Honestly, he's definitely the worst character in this film.
I somewhat love him just for like the weird peroxide.
So bad, it was great. Yeah. I did like his look as well.
Yeah. I love that you kind of get the thing, because you think, oh, maybe he's in the same scene as them, and like he's even looked down upon those guys because like he's a surfer dude, and it's like, oh, is he? It's only like because I think he escapes, doesn't he, from the radio station, and then just wants to come back because he's that dumb. He's like, I was having so much fun in there, I want to come back.
Oh God, bloody! And it's mad because like you think of all. He plays like a lot of daft characters though, doesn't he? David Arquette.
Yeah, I always get confused because I think like I saw Scary Movie before I saw Scream, so like the spoof of his character in Scary Movie is got more of an impact on my brain than his character in Scream. So I just think like he is, but I think he is quite like a doofus in that as well, isn't he?
Oh, he is. He is 100%.
And yeah, I love the fact that they've um, like the trailer for the new Screams come out, and all of a sudden, like David Arquette's character is like quite moody, and like all of a sudden he's like older, sexy man. It's like that's not what that character was. He was like kind of a bit of a hapless fool.
Well, I was talking about this with my friend recently, actually. We were talking about how David Arquette was kind of like the hunk at one point.
Mhm.
Like he was like a huge, like with like Johnny Depp or whatever. He was like known as like this massive hunk. But I always feel like a lot of the roles that I feel like he fell off the radar because like a lot of the roles didn't really like fit
Mhm.
that thing,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
that will play like the hunky characters or whatever, and Brad Pitt does, but I don't think David Arquette did. And then he's definitely not known as like the hunk anymore. But then he went like all Lynchian, which is probably cooler, really. But
I love the fact, looking through his IMDb when I was like researching this episode, is that like he's actually a wrestler as well.
yes, I know there's a documentary about it, isn't there?
Yeah, and it's like the fact that like there's just every so often, like even from the 90s, there's like things where it's like David Arquette in like AEW or like like WWE, like rosters, and it's like yeah, he's in a couple of episodes of that, and I'm like, that's amazing. I love the fact that like he's just a massive nerd at heart. I imagine.
Yes, yeah. Big
Um,
love to David Arquette. It was a mad role, but you've got to love him.
So let's talk about. I guess yeah. You said he's your favorite in this film, and I think he's mine as well. Chris Farley, the late great Chris Farley. What a fucking performance, right?
Very good. I mean, yeah, the like bumbling police, the bumbling cop, you've got to love it. There wasn't enough of him in it, actually, I think. I think because there was so many characters in it, certain people didn't get like enough time almost. Again, like Kramer, who didn't get an ending to his story. But like, yeah, I really liked Chris Farley in this.
He's got amazing face
already
acting, right?
Yeah, he does. He definitely does. Yeah, I really enjoyed the scene where he goes to like the concert, like, and he's like, no one's acknowledging that he's a policeman at all, and they're just kind of like punching him, and he pulls off his nipple.
It's when like it's the moments like we get of Chris Farley, like that one, and I don't. He just looks lost a lot of the time. Like when he's being told to do, it's almost like I'd love to see the backstory of his character. Like it feels like it's his. He conveys that it's like his first day on the job somewhat. Like he's just getting like pushed around by everyone, whether it's O'Malley or like I think one of the other. It just cuts to him and he's getting picked on by a guy who's like, I think your belt's at breaking point, big boy, whilst he's trying to put up
Oh,
like the police line do not cross tape and stuff. It's just like his face.
yeah.
You want to hug him. You want to sort of be like, oh, it's okay, Chris. Like you're gonna get through this tough ordeal.
No, give him a break.
And,
I don't love how he just goes to get that tape. Like, there must have been an easier way around that. Like,
well, somebody really like brilliantly pointed this out on Twitter to me. It was like, what would Airheads look like? Like this plot couldn't work in 2021. Like because it's like that whole thing of like if they needed to find her, it'd be like, oh, just call her mobile. Do you know what I mean? Or like
yeah.
even
Yeah.
if you'd made a demo, it's like
Although
oh
I think she did have a phone though, and he was trying to ring her, but she was ignoring it or something.
no, I think she had gone out because you hear their shared
Oh,
voicemail, and he's like, she's
yeah.
out for the night, man. Who knows where she's gonna be? Maybe the whiskey. But like
Do
yeah,
people just hang out in the whiskey on their own? Like
I guess
at the bar.
if you're a part of the scene, right? Because she seems like she's known because those guys are like, I'm not sure whether it's a thing of like they know her or they're like, she's an attractive woman and no way would she like, well, one, like, why, like, he's a cop, so there's a reason he's talking about it, but their thing is like, oh, all right, fat boy, like, why are you trying to talk to this sexy woman? It's like, well, he's a cop. That's his reason for talking to me.
Yeah.
Um,
I do wish like I was that cool though, where you just like walk into the whiskey and hang out,
yeah,
like
yeah,
just vibing in there, like you know.
I'm like too socially awkward that I couldn't like even like going into like a coffee shop or like if I go in, I'm like it's to go. Even if I've got nowhere to be, I'm just like kind of like walking around aimlessly, like oh yeah, this is me now. Like yeah, yeah. The confidence to be able to hang out on the Sunset Strip
Yeah, that
alone.
is
Yeah, it's really the dream. Yeah, I
good.
don't think this film would work today as well because clearly, if you had a demo, it would be in an email somewhere. It would be on the cloud. It would be like set. Do you know what I mean? Like you would have an MP3 on your phone or something like that, and just pass me the aux cable. Let's get this party going.
But it annoys me they've only even so like even though back then like it annoys me they only have 2 copies. Like make more copies, surely.
Yeah, and it's 94, right? CDs. I'm not sure what CD burning was like around then. I know in the late 90s it was bloody kicking off. I was burning CDs left, right, and centre.
Yeah.
Um, so, well, is there? I'm trying to think that if there's any other areas of this film that we've missed out. Any key scenes or moments that you feel like we've missed out on, Molly?
Um. Hmm. Well, it was. I think it's based on Dog Day Afternoon, isn't it? I think that's quite.
Oh, I didn't even. Yes, it is right. Well, yeah. A thing I
Yeah.
wanted to ask you is Alan Partridge Alpha Papa just basically a remake of this film as well?
That is so funny you said that because I watched Airheads recently and I watched Alpha Papa straight after.
It's got a
'Cause I
similar
was
vibe,
like,
right?
yeah,
Like,
and I was like, I want to watch Alpha Papa, and I watched it immediately after it.
because
So yeah.
they're
It's
great.
just a mix of Dog Day Afternoon and Alpha Papa. I think that Steve Coogan just wanted to make Airheads, but with Alan Partridge.
Yeah, because Steve Coogan, right? Like everyone always forgets that he's kind of got this real fucking bad boy streak to him, where like obviously like he dated
Yeah.
Courtney Cox and like definitely probably like
Courtney Love. Courtney
Courtney
Love.
Love. No, sorry, not Courtney Cox. I'm getting him confused with David Arquette. Uh,
Yeah.
um,
And she said that the only thing she regrets other than taking crack or something was going out with Steve Coogan, which I think's wild. Like what happened? What happened in that time frame? That is saying something.
yeah, yeah, that's the thing. I guess obviously he's someone who's so synonymous with the character of Alan Partridge that like there's definitely got to be some darkness under there somewhere, right?
Defo.
Yeah, but yeah,
All geniuses are. Well,
mhm. I love that kind of there's the subplot of this of Michael McKean's character is selling the radio station essentially. So I think that's where it really feels like the Alpha Papa thing because
yes.
even the radio DJs and the staff like end up siding with um the kidnappers because they're like, oh, you're gonna fuck us over anyway. This is going to become like, was it Radio Rain? Listen to the sounds of the rain.
Yeah. Oh, God.
Amazing. Yeah. Is
Um,
anything else
who
that
would
we've missed?
then? Who would be Pat from Alpha Papa? Like, is that Brendan Fraser? Oh, it would be Rex, wouldn't it?
Yeah, he's the loose cannon, right? Yeah. You got to have the loose cannon. I think it's because he's the one who instigates it, and I guess the rest of the film is Brendan Fraser trying to, I don't know, play damage control of what Rex has started. But like even then, they all seem to be quite loving it. It's like we could like it's the kids are running the school. Like we'll put on what music we want. We'll go out and I think something that felt quite bizarre, and it's mentioned in the film as a weird moment, and especially like now we're like watching it when they get on top of the car and just start shouting Rodney King like as a chant to get them to turn the power back on.
Oh yeah. I forgot about that.
Which yeah, again feels it's quite a dark thing to be like referencing like the what, the death of a black man at the hands of the LAPD. Like,
Yeah, a little bit.
yeah, it's it's a weird one. Yeah, so
So weird.
as you mentioned, this film ends off with them in prison because that's how it's always going to go. Where do you think these characters would go next? What would you like to have seen that happen to them after they get out of prison?
I'd imagine, and if they did a film, I'd imagine that it'd be like a good rise and fall story. So like they would make, they'd be massive. They then fame gets too much to handle. They get themselves into some mad predicaments. They lose everything, and they're back to square one.
Perfect.
In my head, like a good ride, that would be a really good story. Like with the whole when the fame gets to their head.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to see that. But I hope they're okay. That sounds but then at the end they realise that all they needed was each other.
Exactly. And I love the fact that like this film, the whole thing is about selling out and stuff like that, and obviously like being true to who you are to some degree. And I think it's greatly it's a great bit of stunt casting and having Judd Nelson as the stuffy record executive, because like obviously so synonymous with the character of Bender from The Breakfast Club, and it almost feels like that's like the antithesis of that character. Like he would very much have been either Chaz, Rex, or Pip, like if
that's true.
in his later life. So yeah, I love that I love that, and I love his like little shit stained beard he has on the bottom of his lip.
Oh yeah.
Do
you know if they really did Brendan Fraser really sing the song?
It sounds like him, right? Like it definitely does. And yeah, let me double check here. There is.
If it is, then
The Lone Ranger's hit single "Degenerated" is actually a song by 1980s punk group Reagan Youth, but it doesn't say if.
Oh, I think I
sung
do.
it.
I think that the band, there was a band whose song it was. I don't know who sings the version in the film, but I'm sure that they ended up getting sued for using an existing song by that band. I'm sure, I could be making this up, but I'm sure something happened and they got loads of money for it. Or there's some kind of mix up, and
that feels very anti-punk, right? Suing.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is no mention whether it is Brendan Fraser singing, but I think it is. It sounds like it definitely it sounds like his voice, and it doesn't feel like that much of a stretch to be able to sing that. Like it's a great song. I was kind of like listening to it at the end, going like if this film had done well, you could imagine that would have been a great little imagine them touring as the Lone Rangers.
Oh my god.
How different their career. I think if this film was massive, their careers could have been totally different. They could have been almost like the what are they? The Spinal Tap guys, kind of just having this career and seeing these ensemble pieces, which is those three. I know that Steve Buscemi and Adam Sandler kind of are in each other's pockets, and Steve Buscemi's in every single Adam Sandler film, basically.
Yeah. Well, it's crazy because this film, they're all pretty new at the time.
Yeah.
Been in, I think Steve Buscemi had already been in some Tarantino films. I don't know, but around, or maybe at the time, 94.
Yeah, so he would have already been in Reservoir Dogs.
Yeah.
And he would have had his cameo in Pulp Fiction as Buddy Holly.
Yeah, but it's interesting that the film didn't do that well, but all the actors in it went on to be very, very successful.
Yeah, it's one of those weird anomalies where everyone down the board of the acting talent is massive names, whether from the past or going forward from that, and I don't know. It's weird that it didn't do that well because it's got a lot of charm, and this is probably an impossible question to ask, but like of the kind of triumphant of Bill and Ted, Wayne's World, or the Airheads posse, like who would you pip as your favorite?
Ooh,
It's hard, isn't it?
really hard. I'd probably say Wayne's World, I think.
Mhm.
But it's hard because it's different reasons.
Yeah.
I don't know. That is hard. What's yours?
I'm like a very big Bill and Ted fan, just because I think like they've got that sweetness to them. But I think like this film these guys fit perfectly in the middle between them. They've kind of got like the nastier edge of Wayne's World and the sweetness of Bill and Ted.
It's like I said at the beginning, really. If there was not High Story and they were in a different story, they would 100% probably be my picks.
Mhm.
But I feel like they were too restricted in that plot, and I think that is why it didn't do well. I think there's too those, it's too big of a, not big, but yeah, they were too restricted in it, where there's just so much stuff that could have happened, and I would have liked to have seen, I think, because I'm not generally a big fan of heist films in like, it's not my genre at all. Like, I don't mind like parody versions. Obviously this isn't like Al Papa and that, but it's not a big thing, that genre that I like. So yeah, I think that is probably the one. I think Airheads too. We need it.
the campaign starts now.
It really does.
We've got
Give it the justice it deserves. Like, come on.
2-person campaign. We're gonna be flying banners. We're gonna be sneaking into film studios, trying to force them to play with a script that we'll pen as soon as this recording's over.
And a water gun with hot sauce.
Perfect, Molly. I can't wait. Well, but before we wrap this up, I just want to ask you this. What would you have thought of this film if, instead of Brendan Fraser, it starred John Cusack?
No.
And that's all you need on that. I think he's too cynical. John Cusack seems too cynical. And I know you recently mentioned I think it was on the Damn Daniel podcast, that you got blocked by William Shatner very early on in this podcast's existence. I got blocked on Twitter by John Cusack. So very much this is the fuck John Cusack podcast as much as it is.
No way. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm not a fan. Fuck John Cusack. Fuck William Shatner.
Amazing.
So Brendan Fraser.
Yeah, I'm so glad he's back. The Renaissance, like I'm all here for it. I'm all here for that.
I'm so excited. I'm so excited for his new films, and he is just an angel.
I think I'm going to treat myself later to watching the new Steven Soderbergh film. Like, I like Steven Soderbergh anyway, but like when I saw that Brendan Fraser was in it, I was like, oh yes, please. Like, I'll have a bit of Brendan Fraser. So I always like to score these films. Oh no, before we get to the scoring, let's go through some Coppola connections. So did you manage to figure out, are there people who have worked with any of the other Coppola family members in any other films that are also in this film, Molly?
Oh, well, yeah. Wait, am I trying to make a connection with an actor in this film?
Yeah, so
I'll connects the Coppolas. Because you did Funny People with Jason Schwartzman, right? Can I do that with Adam Sandler? Can I connect that?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. That's on my list. Yeah.
And can I? Is this a connection? Just, I don't know, the David Arquette, Patricia Arquette thing. Can I do that, or does that have to be acting?
Yeah, no. That is one. And also, David Arquette was in the Outsiders TV show which Francis Ford Coppola was an executive producer on because it was
Mhm.
based on the film that he made in the 1980s. Yeah,
Hmm.
I'll rattle off a few. There's some. I've just kind of had a boring evening on IMDb to scrolling through people's pages to see if there's any links. But Steve Buscemi is in Zanderley, Con Air, and G-Force with Nicolas Cage. He's in On the Road, which was produced by Roman Coppola, and is in Martin Scorsese's directed section Life Lessons in the anthology New York Stories, which also has a segment by Francis Ford Coppola, and is, of course, worked with Jonathan Schwartzman in 1998 in Armageddon as Rockhound, playing another fucking wild card. It seems like that is Steve Buscemi's 90s, right? He kind of plays the real bad guy in Con Air, the kind of like serial murder rapist, like kind of guy, and then Armageddon, he's the guy who kind of gets space dementia and tries to kill everyone with like some big ray gun or whatever.
Nice.
um
So many connections just then. Just
There's more. Adam Sandler is also in Little Nicky, of course, which appeared Patricia Arquette and was a producer on The House Bunny, which Talia Shire's son, Matt Shire, was like a production assistant on. Michael McKean is in Memoirs of the Invisible Man, which Stephanie Schwartzman worked in the costume department for. And he's in Jack, your favourite Francis Ford Coppola film.
yeah.
And let's rattle off. I'll rattle off a couple. This is quite. I always find this section can be quite boring. Judd Nelson, like Nicolas Cage, has an uncredited cameo in Never on Tuesday. Nina Schmizenko, who plays Susie, is in The Bling Ring and is also in Tucker, the Man in His Dreams, which is directed by Francis Ford Coppola. Another weird one here is Marshall Bell is in, I think he's the guy. Let me double check Marshall Bell here. Yeah, Marshall Bell is the like SWAT team leader who like is a great character in this film. The one who like takes Kramer under his wing and keeps keeps mishearing what he's saying, and I think he says like, I was an accountant in the military, and he's like, no, you won't be accountable, don't worry, like, he ends up going on some mad long story about how his wife left him for a pool cleaner, and then obviously he gives Kramer the gun because he finds out that Pip is a pool cleaner. And again, that feels like a thread that could have been pulled upon a bit more, is that thing that you find out that Pip was the guy who his wife slept with or something like that. That would have been great.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's wrap up these connections and then I'll ask you some impossible questions. Joe Mantegna, the voice of Fat Tony, is in The Godfather 3. And Alan Covert, who plays the other, when you're first introduced to Chris Farley, there's like another policeman who goes, okay, like boss or something like that. That's Adam Sandler's stalwart who kind of crops up in all of his films, Alan Covert. So he plays the caddy in Happy Gilmore and plays his best friend in The Wedding Singer, Sammy, the guy with the Michael Jackson glove and stuff like that. So yeah, you see the seeds of where everyone's going. So let me ask you, Molly, what is the perfect wine pairing for this film? Obviously, we've established that the Coppolas love wine. Is this a red wine film? Is this a white wine film? Is this a sparkling wine film? What would be the perfect wine for this film?
Can I pick Buckfast?
Oh yeah, of course you can. It's a tonic wine.
Cheap, something that gets you pissed, something rock and roll. It's Buckfast.
That is perfect. That's the first shout out we've had for Buckfast on this podcast. Yeah, it feels like what sweaty moshers would be drinking, right? That the goal is to get fucked up as quick as possible, and Buckfast is a way to get there.
Exactly.
I can't go any better than that. So is it a mid shelf, bottom shelf, or top shelf wine? I said that out of order, but it makes the same sense.
Well, yeah, it's got to be bottom shelf.
The film, so basically, the film is a bottom shelf.
Oh, you meant the wine?
Well, the wine and the film. Yeah, it's basically, is this a good or bad film?
It's a good film. It's not amazing, but it's fun.
Yeah.
It's fun. I enjoy it. I enjoy it. Makes me feel happy. It's just silly. It's just like a silly 90s film that has lots of flaws in the plot, but yeah, it's cool. It's like the equivalent of like, kind of trashy 90s MTV stuff, like that. It really like embraces that era nicely, especially in America, like American kind of that kind of things. It embraces it nicely, but yeah, as a film, I mean, it's just in the middle. It's nice.
It's a perfect like beers in like a pizza movie. Do you know what I mean? You got a few mates around. You kind of
pizza is necessary, and pizza and buckfast.
Pizza buckfast, and like you can have beers, but you're only allowed to shotgun them. Do you know what I mean? You've got to like drink them in ridiculous, or like do like a beer funnel, or do you know what I mean? Like
beer pong.
You got to really go dirty with it. You got to drink. I don't know. You got to drink a pint out of a Doc Martin boot or something.
Yes,
to experience this film. So amazing. Let's get on to the absolute impossible question of this podcast: is which Coppola family member would you keep? But in doing so, you get rid of the filmographies of the entire rest of the family.
Nicolas Cage.
Oh, would you like to clarify why it's Nicolas Cage for us?
Well, you've got everything. You've got your crappy films that are funny. You've got, amazing films. You've got Leaving Las Vegas. I could, which Moonstruck, my favorite film ever. You've got everything. He's funny, and I don't want to kill him. Because I don't have an emotional connection to, like, I don't have to worry about that. So, yeah, it's got to be Nick Cage. Sorry. And I'm sure there's a lot of film bros that are like, nah, you can't do that, but it is Nicolas Cage.
Well, I think you're in a safe space here because this podcast started off as a Nicolas Cage podcast, so very much like the listeners are very much on side and kind of know my opinions on Nicolas Cage. Like, yeah, he's fascinating, and I always love the idea that he's like a bag of revels. Like, you just don't know what you're gonna get with each new film that comes out. It's like,
exactly, it's exciting when you hear about Nick Cage. Like, it's so exciting. You do not know. Like, I don't get that with any like Sofia Coppola, love, but I know what I'm getting.
Yeah, you're gonna get
more of that forever. Like, Nicolas Cage is different each time.
Yeah, with Sofia Coppola, you're getting like tales of the rich and famous white middle classes and like stuff like that. Or Nicolas Cage, even films where you think you've got it pigeonholed. Like, I think when Pig got like announced, everyone was like, Nick Cage is doing Taken with a pig, and then it came out and it's this like beautiful poetic film about like love and loss that has more in common with like Ratatouille than it does with John Wick. Like, it's like
I love that.
So bizarre. Yeah, that's and I'm not sure if you've seen recently. He signed on to do a Western like set film called Butcher's Crossing, and there's a picture, and again, full of fucking surprises. There's a picture surfaced online of him with a shaved head, and he looks fucking great.
Finally, got rid of that hair. He's always got bad hair. This is what we need.
Yeah,
I just look sick.
I think it would be the perfect time. I know there's a Face-Off sequel coming, and obviously John Travolta lopped off his hair a good few years ago. So if that does happen, they both look good with a bald head. So
yes,
fingers crossed for that. So based on this film, Molly, are the Coppolas the greatest film family of all time?
Well, they've got to be, haven't they? Who else? It's got to be.
Well, it's just based on Airheads. Is Airheads enough reason to make them the best film family of all time?
Always better.
Yeah.
No.
Oh, amazing.
Not.
Perfect. Get in the bin, Coppolas. Move on over. Oh yeah, I guess other ones you could go for is the Arquettes, who obviously there's a big link to. There's the Houstons, so Angelica, John Houston. I think there's another one. The Baldwins. Well, let's not talk about that too much at the moment. There's quite a few. I think like there's a real cheap one as well, which is the Newman family, because I know like Randy Newman and like his dad and his uncle have worked in films, so I guess you can call them a film family to some degree, even though it's writing scores. But let's get on to the most important question of this podcast. Molly, what does Bill Murray say to Scarlett Johansson at the end of Lost in Translation?
Bye. Was it not bye?
Well, obviously there's a lot of contention at the fact he whispers something and like the camp that it's never picked up, right? Like
well, also bye, I think.
Perfect. That is my favorite. That's got to be up there. One of my favorite answers for that. It probably is the last thing he says. Right? Is whatever. Yeah. Even if he says something profound, he goes, "All right, bye."
Exactly.
Amazing. You've been a fantastic guest, Molly. Where can people find out everything you're doing? Whether it's the writing you do, obviously you're on, as I said, the Damn Daniel podcast, or any of your comedy dates and that. Where's the best place to follow you?
The best place to follow me is probably on Twitter or Instagram. So my Twitter is Moll McGuiness with a double L. Mm-hmm. And my Instagram is Molly, but like Molleh, like Molly McGuiness, because I can't pronounce my own name. Yeah. But I'm sure if you just type in Molly McGuiness, I should come up, I'd imagine.
Perfect.
And yeah, I'm also on the Damn Daniel podcast. There's on Spotify and YouTube, and it's on Instagram and Twitter and all that jazz.
Perfect.
So yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming and making some Coppola connections with me.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. I've loved it. Thank you for having me.
A massive thank you to Molly McGuiness once again for coming and joining me to talk about this film, and a massive thank you to you guys for listening. It really does mean the world to me. We asked a question on this podcast. We'll ask the question: how would you rank the Bill and Ted boys, the Airhead boys, and the Wayne's World boys? How are you ranking them? Let me know on all the socials. So that is Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and Letterboxd, all at Caged In Pod. Or if you don't want to do it publicly, you can always send me an email. cagedinpod@gmail.com is the best place to find me there. If you'd like to support the podcast, which is always a lovely thing to do, we're on Coffee, so that's ko-fi.com/cagedinpod, where you can just buy me a cup of coffee, and that helps keep the lights on. Well, yeah, it helps me buying DVDs for the films that we've got coming up on the podcast, and any other little bits and pieces, and anything that might go wrong with the podcast, any leads or anything like that I may need. Or you can head on over to Patreon, which I'm really happy to announce that the 25th of this month will be the first ever episode of the brand new Patreon exclusive show called Movie Brat Bros. We'll be kicking off with a Brian De Palma season, looking at all of the films by the often cited perverted one of the movie Brats. Yeah, often beautiful, often perverted Brian De Palma films. So we'll be kicking off with Phantom of the Paradise from 1974, and I'm joined by not just previous guests, but I would like to say good friends, Daryl and Jeanette bar. I headed over to theirs a couple of weeks ago now and recorded an episode in person. So yeah, it's a fun one. It's a great one. And I think you'll enjoy it. So yeah, that's only like £2.50 or $3 a month. So be sure to head on over and subscribe to that. You can find it in the show notes for all of that goodness. As for next week on the podcast, I will be joined by BBC Radio 2's very own James King to talk about the Francis Ford Coppola 1982 S.E. Hinton adaptation, The Outsiders, which has recently got a beautiful 4K restoration that is released via Studio Canal over here. And I was lucky enough, I pre-ordered the 4K box set, which is absolutely beautiful. Comes with some amazing posters designed by Tony Stella, and just jam-packed full of extras. So you got commentaries by Francis Ford Coppola himself, as well as the cast. So the cast of this is insane. It's C. Thomas Howell, Matt Dillon, Ralph Macchio, Patrick Swayze, Rob Lowe, Diane Lane, Emilio Estevez, Tom Cruise up in that bitch. So yeah, it's a great one. It's a great film, and it'll be a great chat, I'm sure. I only say that because that conversation hasn't been recorded, but I've spoken to James before, and he's a lovely guy, and I know he's got a strong affinity for the 1980s, so I'm very much looking forward to it. So as always, I've been Petros Patsilivas, your guide through the crazy world of the Coppola family tree. Remember to keep it caged in, and I'll catch you next time.